2,000 years ago, in a small village called Nazareth, a child was born who would change the course of human history. His name was Jesus Christ, and his story remains one of the most profound and transformative accounts ever told. If you're drawn to stories of faith, redemption, and spiritual awakening, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel so you don't miss more deep dives into the world's greatest narratives. Jesus was born to Mary and Joseph, humble people living under Roman occupation in the land of Israel. The gospel accounts tell us that his birth was announced by angels and marked by signs in the heavens. From his earliest days, Jesus was recognized as special, as one set apart for a divine purpose. As Jesus grew, he spent time in prayer, meditation, and communion with God. At around 30 years old, he emerged from obscurity and began his public ministry. He traveled throughout Judea and Galilee, teaching in synagogues and mountainsides and beside the sea. His message was revolutionary. Love your enemies, forgive those who hurt you, care for the poor and the sick, and believe that God's kingdom was breaking into the world right then and there. Jesus performed miracles that astonished those who witnessed them. He healed the blind, cured the lame, cast out demons, and even raised the dead. These acts weren't merely displays of power. They were signs that God's reign was present, that brokenness could be restored, and that wholeness was possible for everyone who believed. Thousands followed him, drawn by his words and his deeds. He called 12 disciples to walk with him, to learn from him, and eventually to carry his message to the world. These men left behind their fishing nets, their tax booths, their ordinary lives, to follow this teacher who spoke with an authority unlike anything they had ever heard. Jesus taught them parables about seeds and sowers, about lost sheep and prodigal sons, about the nature of God's love and mercy. But Jesus' message challenged the religious authorities of his time. The Pharisees and Sadducees saw him as a threat to their power and their interpretation of the law. His compassion toward sinners, his willingness to heal on the Sabbath, his claim of intimate relationship with God, all of this provoked their anger and their determination to stop him. As his ministry progressed, Jesus knew that his path would lead to suffering. He spoke plainly to his disciples about his coming death, about betrayal, about the cross. Yet he also spoke of resurrection, of victory, of redemption that would come through his sacrifice. His final days in Jerusalem were filled with profound moments of teaching and prayer. On the night before his crucifixion, Jesus gathered with his 12 disciples for what would become known as the Last Supper. He broke bread and shared wine, telling them these acts would forever remember his body and blood given for the forgiveness of sins. Jesus was arrested, tried before the Roman governor Pontius Pilate, and condemned to death. He was crucified on a cross outside Jerusalem's walls, between two criminals, his body broken, his blood spilled. His followers watched in anguish. It seemed the story was over, that all hope was lost, that this teacher and healer had been defeated. But 3 days later, something extraordinary happened. Women who came to his tomb found it empty. Angels declared that Jesus had risen from the dead. He appeared to his disciples, to Mary Magdalene, to hundreds of witnesses. Death itself had been conquered. The resurrection became the cornerstone of Christian faith, proof that Jesus was indeed the Son of God, that his sacrifice had purchased redemption for all who would believe. After his resurrection, Jesus spent 40 days with his disciples, teaching them, commissioning them to go into all the world and proclaim the good news. He promised them the Holy Spirit, divine presence and power to sustain them in their mission. Then he ascended into heaven, returning to his Father, yet promising to be with them always. The disciples carried this message across the ancient world. They faced persecution, imprisonment, and death. Yet they persisted because they had encountered the risen Christ. Their testimony spread from Jerusalem to Rome, from the Mediterranean to distant lands. Churches were planted, believers multiplied, and the movement transformed nations and cultures. 2,000 years later, billions of people followed Jesus Christ. Thank you so much for watching, and please subscribe to the channel for more stories that matter.